education to order. So are you the secretary?
I am the
Okay,
secretary.
wonderful. Please note that all board members are present. And let's stand for the flag salute, please. Bernice, would you like to lead us to the flag salute?
Certainly. Everyone standing. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chris.
Yes.
Okay, I need a motion to approve the agenda. Absolutely. Tori, second. Eileen, so we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any questions or comments before we move? All right, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay.
And thank you for hanging in this evening. Flores and his stitches removed from the foot. He's done some work. And Mrs. Lewis is on duty. She'll be released about 5 o'clock. So if you've got me to run,
So you got it all? You can handle
thank
it.
you in advance for your patience.
Great. Okay, so we are good to roll. Number 5 on the agenda, superintendent reports and presentations. Superintendent Corey.
Yes, we had a request for a comparison of math data, and Mr. Swanitz has put together a presentation that was included in the board backup material, and he is here to present. Mr. Swanitz.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Is that mic on, Mark?
Oh, yeah, would you please? Should be.
Testing. Yeah, okay. Thank you for having me here today. The purpose of the presentation is going to be to discuss the background of math standards in California, to examine the various tools used to assess those standards, and to look at a few data points for comparison. So we'll get started talking a little bit about the background. Very briefly, in 1983, President Reagan's Excellence in Education Commission released a landmark report. That report was called "A Nation at Risk, the Imperative for Educational Reform." And that report described a, quote, rising tide of mediocrity in the nation's school system. And as a result of that report, there was a decades-long efforts at educational reform nationwide. And one of the ways in which those efforts were manifested in the state of California was in the form of the first adoption of state standards. And the math standards for the state of California, the first effort at those were adopted in 1997. Those standards, those original standards, defined what students should know and be able to do at each grade level or course level, but they provided no guidance on how the curriculum should be delivered. At their core, the original standards emphasized computational skills and procedural skills, the conceptual understanding and problem solving, but they neglected to address a deeper understanding of mathematical principles. In those early days, from 1998 to 2013, the standards were assessed under the State Standardized Testing and Reporting Program, more commonly known as STAR testing. For those of you who remember that, Tori? Yes. They consisted of a battery of content tests designed to be administered at certain grade levels or in high school at the completion of certain courses. These were known as the California Standards Tests, or CSTs, and they were traditional standardized multiple choice fill-in-the-bubble tests, and they were administered to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, typically as end-of-course exams. Moving forward to 2010, after almost a decade of development, there were new internationally benchmarked research-based standards developed by a coalition of states formed by governors and state education department chiefs, which replaced the 1997 standards when the State Board of Education adopted them. One thing to note is that it's a common misperception that these are federal standards and that they were mandated by the federal government. They were not. They were developed by a coalition of states and adopted individually by those states. The new standards emphasize mathematical content in the context of real-world situations, using math to solve problems, and include standards of mathematical practice, which are common across grade levels and courses, and the mathematical content standards. Those mathematical practices foster deeply embedded strategies for mathematical thinking, expertise, skills, and knowledge, while the mathematical content standards emphasize mastery of specific mathematical content. However, unlike the previous standards, the new standards do recommend pedagogical approaches to the teaching of mathematics, which include such strategies as discovery learning, where students work individually or in groups to reason through the solutions to problems before they're taught a more traditional method of solving those. That research-based approach opens doors to students better understanding the mechanics of the math when it is taught to them, and developing the ability to apply and extend it to new kinds of problems, rather than simply having them memorize formulas and processes for solving problems of types similar to the ones they've seen before. I think in the last slide I forgot to mention that in 2013 is when the state board adopted what they call the higher math standards for the new standards, and those are the high school ones. So rolling forward to 2015, since 2015 those new standards have been assessed using the state's California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, also known as CASP, which is a single computer adaptive exam known as the Smarter Balanced Assessment. It's given to all juniors regardless of what mathematics courses they're enrolled in or what the highest level of mathematics they have completed. So, back when the state board adopted those new standards in 2013 for the high schools, San Ynez High School began preparing to roll them out to the students. We took a year of planning and curriculum development and public education. So in 2013-14, our math teachers were working closely with the math curriculum experts from the County Office of Education to develop our new course sequence and content, while the math department chair, Superintendent Corey, and I held public meetings at each of our primary feeder schools to educate parents of incoming freshmen and others who were interested about what the high school math program is going to be about our changes that were coming. In the fall of 2014, our freshmen in the class of 2018 started the transition to the new course sequence by taking either Math 90 or Math 101. Math 90 was the remedial class to build skills, while 101 was the primary freshman course for the majority of our freshman class. That group of freshmen then progressed through the introduction of each new course, including Math 201 and 201 honors in their sophomore year, and 301 and 301 honors in their junior year, becoming the first graduating class to complete the new integrated math sequence built on the new standards in 2019. So what I've been asked to do this afternoon is to present some data on math performance pre and post adoption and rollout of those new standards. So that's what I'm going to do, but I do want to kind of preface it with the fact that it's problematic to do so for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is the inherent comparison mismatch between the new and the old standards and the tools used to assess them. So what can we do about that? First, let's talk about why there's the comparison mismatch. First, the new approach we took to the new standard was to develop integrated courses which spiral topics together over 3 years for repetition, depth of instruction, and developing connections between mathematical principles, and for developing solid and the former courses, that's our new method. The former courses were taught in a siloed fashion, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, with little regard for the connection between those topics within those courses. Second, the assessments of the old and new standards are too different to make valid comparisons. Notably, the new assessments are taken online and are computer adaptive based on each student's individual performance, and they do not include rigid timelines. That means they have unlimited time to take those assessments. That makes the new assessments much better tools to assess mastery. The old assessments, as you know, were traditional standardized bubble exams where every student got the same set of questions and a rigid time limit in which to complete them. Additionally, the new assessment is a summative exam given to all 11th graders regardless of the level of math completed, while the old assessments are given as end-of-course exams and assess only the content area taught in that course. There is one exception in the old assessments in the STAR test, the CSTs, and that was the summative high school math test, which was given also at the junior year, but only for kids who were not enrolled in Algebra 1 Geometry or Algebra 2 for one reason or another. And those reasons could be that they had completed that course sequence and were taking advanced math courses, or it could be that they were taking an alternative path to meeting their high school graduation requirements like entrepreneurial math or something like that back in those days. Finally, the way the scores on the exam are reported have shifted. making comparisons difficult. The old assessments had 5 cut scores, reported as proficient, basic, below basic, and far below basic, and advanced. And then the new ones have 4 cut scores, exceeded, met, nearly met, or not met the standards. And so the targets on those two are on the new standards, to fall in the exceeded or met the standards category. In the old days, it was to meet the advanced or proficient benchmark. So while we're going to take a look at some comparisons of data sets, all of these are going to have some footnotes about why they are less than statistically valid. So what can we look at? One thing that's been suggested is that we look at grades. Grades are a comparison mismatch, and they lack statistical validity because the courses don't align. Comparing grades from different courses doesn't make any sense. So for that reason, we're not going to be looking at grades tonight. A second possible data set that looked at is the Casey scores. Casey is the California High School Exit Exam. But because the high school exit exam was written to assess the original content standards only, because it was only ever meant to be a minimum competency exam given to sophomores, and because it was discontinued in 2016, right, as we were rolling out the new standards, that is also not going to be a data set that we're going to look at tonight. Standardized testing, however, the STAR test and the CASP test, I've already mentioned is a comparison mismatch. However, I don't think that precludes us from looking at the data side by side. You can draw whatever conclusions you like from that. So we will be taking a look at those despite the fact that the test formats are different and they assess different standards. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. Advanced placement is another place that we can take a look at comparisons. Because advanced placement only really assesses the content taught in that particular course, so if it's statistics, it's just assessing statistics, not the underlying math. Calculus is the same way. Then those comparisons probably don't offer a great deal of insight. Nevertheless, we can take a look at how we can pre and post on those as well. And then finally, the CSU entry-level mathematics placement is another tool that we can use. That is the CSU's determination of readiness for college work, and they maintain these records online by school. You can go back and look up the percentage of your kids in each given graduating class who attended CSU as first-time freshmen and were deemed to be proficient for college-level mathematics, what percentage were deemed not proficient. So we'll take a look at that also, and that may actually be our best, even though the data set is very small, maybe our best place to look at proficiency over time for mathematics. So, as we started, as we noted, we'll begin not with a comparison, but with viewing the old STAR California Standards Test results side by side with the new CASP Smarter Balanced Assessment results, and that's for illustrative purposes only. The CST are on the right, on the left-hand side. The Smarter Balanced Assessment are on the right. So they see the proficient or advanced versus the met or exceeded the standard. Key to understanding what you're looking at here is that the California Standards Test shown on the left were those discrete exams administered at the end of each of those courses, as well as the summative high school math test. And then on the right, the Smarter Balance was the test given to all juniors regardless of level completed, regardless of whether they were enrolled in a math class or not. So by looking at these charts side by side, despite the incongruence of the data sets, math performance on the standardized assessments in general has remained fairly consistent before and after with the old standards, old assessments, new standards, and new assessments. Although it's not shown in either of these graphs, I can speak confidently that it's worth noting that San Ynez High School scored significantly better than Santa Barbara County and state averages on all of these exams in all of these years. So as you recall, the new California standards for high school were adopted in 2013. The rollout of new courses began in 2014-15. So you see that dividing line there, where the arrows are going opposite directions. Old standards moving back to the left, and their new standards moving to the right. You might notice that Calculus BC is not there towards the end of the scale, the 2017-18 bars. That's because that's by design. When we implemented our new standards, we phased out Calculus BC because we started all freshmen at 101, and then we accelerated them through Honors 201, Honors 301 junior and senior year, and gave them the opportunity to take Calculus AB in their senior year. The reason for that decision was that typically only about 8 kids were taking Calculus BC at San Ynez High School in any given year, and we were going to build a system that was going to serve the majority of students, not those 8 kids. Anybody who still wants to take Calculus BC is allowed to do so online or through other means that we cooperate with them at a post-secondary institution or whatever. We cooperate with them on that. So AP test rates do tend to be fairly volatile. Year to year, you can see that. We have scores popping up and down pretty regularly from year to year, and that's largely in part due to the variability in the inherent math abilities of any cohort of students. It also has to do with the number of kids who take the exam and a bunch of other factors. But that said, it's been relatively stable. I think if you look across there, you don't see anything that really jumps out at you, except perhaps if you're looking carefully at the statistics pass rates. Statistics is the dark green bars on the left. Those pass rates, with the anomalous exception of 2013, have actually been steadily on the rise in the era of the new standards and assessments. That, I think, could be attributed to the fact that we never discretely taught statistics as a subject until AP statistics in the old model, but statistics are actually interwoven throughout the new standards and are taught at each of the 3 years in bits and pieces. So there's some foundation for statistics by the time kids get to AP statistics. So moving on then, we can take a look finally at that third category that I said might have some value to look at, which is the CSU entry-level mathematics placement. Let me explain that entry-level mathematics proficiency is determined using 2 factors. One is kids who qualify under EAP, which is the early assessment program, and that's based on the standardized tests that they do take in high school. So in the old days it was the STAR test, the CSTs. Now it's based on the Smarter Balanced. They determine whether their proficiency is good enough for college mathematics partly from that. So if you qualify early, it's based on that. The other way to qualify is when you get to college and you take their entry-level mathematics placement exam. Then if you qualify as proficient, you would fall in the proficient group there. So again, old standards versus new standards, the 2 arrowheads pointing the way. You can see that really the difference between the numbers of kids meeting the proficiency standards for college math are pretty similar across the board. In fact, some of our higher scores have been in the post-new standards era. I do want to say 2 things. One is, again, I said this was a relatively small sample size, so these are kids who met their A through G requirements, were accepted to California State University campuses, and decided to attend as first-time freshmen. In each of these years, that was anywhere between 16 and 25 of our kids, so roughly 8 to 12% of any graduating class. So it doesn't really give us a comprehensive picture of math preparation, but it does tell us that those kids who are four-year college bound are successful.
Mark, can we get in, I'm sorry, really fast, when you see the UC system as far as their...
UC doesn't have it reported in the same way
Right.
that I can look at, so I don't have those statistics.
They take it independently.
Right. Correct. And then one other thing to note about this is that you note that the graphs there stops at 2017, and that's because of the fact that Executive Order 1110 changed the CSU system so that now all kids, they don't rely on proficiency tests or placement tests now. Beginning with the fall of 2018, all students take an entry-level baccalaureate mathematics quantitative reasoning course. So as opposed to being split off into remedial courses in advanced math, they take that class, or they can take more advanced classes. So, that about sums it up, and yes, the pun is intended. But I'm now prepared to open myself up to any questions that you may have, and I'd be happy to return to any slides if you'd like to reference those.
We have a few minutes. Are there questions for members? John?
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. I appreciate it. It's a lot of work.
Thank you.
I appreciate that it's probably mostly because of my badgering you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Your last slide on the CSU data, that was based on San Ynez Valley Union High School graduates, not California high school graduates as a whole.
Correct. In an effort to try to keep things limited, I did just, all of these statistics are just San Ynez High School. I have a tendency, as some of you may know, to do long, elaborate presentations that include county and state comparisons and sometimes national and worldwide comparisons, but no, these data is all San Ynez High School.
I spoke to Superintendent Corey earlier today, and I only really had 2 days advance notice to look at your data. I appreciate that, but my question to you is, I asked Scott if I could be given time at some point in the future, be it at the August or September board meeting, where I was to present a PowerPoint. It's no secret that, I guess to say the least, I'm dubious about the success of Common Core and not an outright critic. And so my question to you is, if I was to present a compelling argument on the failures of Common Core, would you have an open enough mind to be able to reconsider the drastic overhaul of our high school's math curriculum?
Unfortunately, it's not really a decision that lies with me. This is the State Board of Education adopted curriculum for the state of California. It's how we're assessed.
I respectfully disagree with that, and I would address that in my PowerPoint, so if you would allow my question to be
Sure.
hypothetical.
Hypothetically, I'm open to hearing any information that's presented, pro or con.
Okay. And of course, you know, I suppose everybody's aware of this, that recently the governor of Florida completely abandoned the Common Core program in his state. And you might want to wonder why. I would be more than happy to answer that at a future point in time. And I thank you, that's all I have.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Just wanted to
Yeah,
say during our presentation, Mark, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on, and let's all kind of use our louder classroom voices if you want to, so that might pick up everything. Okay, thank you. So under 6 under public comment, I just would like to read this statement again. There's some new people in the audience, and bear with me, please. The last few meeting sessions of this Board of Education have lacked the decorum and civility to which we must return. In order for us to do right by the voters that elected us, public comment is critical to our process and is to be encouraged. Equally critical to our process, according to Board Bylaw 9323, is ensuring that the business of the board is conducted in accordance with board bylaws and procedures that enable the board to efficiently consider and carry out the will of the majority. Regarding public comment during the board meeting, the following procedures shall be adhered to. 1, persons wishing to address the board for items not on the agenda shall be allowed 3 minutes for each presentation, and they can come up to the podium when called. Number 2, comment cards for general public comment. Agenda item 6 are due now. Are there any cards from the public that need to be submitted at this time? Additional cards for this agenda item will not be accepted after this point. Okay, so with that, we have 1 speaker card. 3 minutes. Ms. Andrews?
Thank you. Deb Andrews. Dr. Wayne Bishop was co-author of the 1997 California Math Standards. They were excellent. They were an example for the whole country on good math standards. They were very good at what they were intended to do. I urge you to contact Dr. Wayne Bishop, Cal State LA. I know he had a bad accent, I hope he's okay. Or James Milgram at Stanford. Those were like the lighthouse for the nation as far as math, but they were discontinued. As far as the preparation for college, it was determined through legislation that, and this is federal, that colleges would no longer have remedial classes. They were bound to accept K-12 preparation. So they can no longer do remediation. They gave the classes new names and basically it dumbed down college. So this is a real concern. I applaud you for looking at math, very important to all children, not just the 8 to 12% that were represented in that last slide. I wanted to talk about the board and its importance to the citizens. Citizens, schools, citizens are sovereign. The board is our elected representatives, not unelected bureaucrats. I think it's really important, I'll restate that your seating arrangement is changed so that we directly face all our board members, that you have microphones, you can hear me well, and the room can hear me, but we really can't hear you very well. The board and what the board does is so important to students, you just can't imagine. A 60-year-old friend said to me one time, when he graduated from high school, his father, who was a member of the Board of Education, handed him his diploma as he walked across the stage. And it was a wonderful memory. So when you engage with the students, when you hand them their diplomas, they sometimes remember it for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
I'd like to read the following statement, please. Members of the public may also address the board on each agenda item as it is discussed. Public comment cards for all agenda items shall be received prior to the item being addressed by the board. Additional public comment cards will not be accepted after discussion of a particular agenda item has begun. Thank you. All right, let's move on. So we are at item B, which is the consent agenda. And I will at this time entertain a motion for approval.
I so moved.
John, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second.
Since that was held up by me.
John, I appreciate that. So John and second by Chris. Okay, is there any discussion before we vote? Not at this time, thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Superintendent Corey.
Vote. Dr. Beatty.
Aye.
Mrs. Preston.
Aye.
Mrs. Burris.
Aye.
Mrs. Babcock.
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger.
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone. All right, page 2. Let's go to the action agenda. And the first item, number 1, is approval to award bids to trade contractors for San Ynez Valley Union High School campus-wide facilities improvements. And Superintendent Corey, this is yours.
So I'm actually very excited to be at this portion of the agenda. I'd like to recognize two guests, Mr. Kroger, Alan Kroger, and Pete Hempstead in the back as a construction manager. They'll be here to answer some questions, but I wanted to create a little bit of a buzz, if I may, by showing a couple of slides about where we are going. For those of you that don't know, we had talked about this scope of construction work back in last November. 7 months ago, we had a budget for that. We were delayed for a host of reasons, one of them being DSA for a period of time as well. And we wound up in a situation where we were not ready to go out to bid in March, but we had to wait until May. And so we knew that would cause some problems in terms of finding qualified bidders to bid on the project, and also incurring escalation costs. I'm very pleased to announce that you'll find on your agenda this evening that we do have 2 qualified bidders, one for a very small scope of work with a significant portion, 4.3 million, a total of 4.5 million in work. We are in a very fortunate position that we are at budget, and we've found qualified contractors to do the work. I want to share a little bit with you, just a couple of pictures on the back, just because this is the fun stuff. Talk first a little bit about just a facilities update in general. And you've seen this, and certainly lots of questions from members of the public as we've been out doing our parking lots and creating lots of dust and that sort of thing. Just some deferred maintenance things that we are taking care of this summer. We have 4 different buildings, 3 of them significant, that we're painting on campus, long overdue. Our facilities planning is for the next multiple years to paint and repair several buildings this summer, assuming that we have the funds to make that happen. And so the B building, library, theater, and the electrical hut out back are getting painted and repaired, which has been great. We're experiencing some definite maintenance issues with those that have long-term implications. And if you recall, with our parking lot at our last board meeting, we approved repairs. We are not able to replace at this time, contingent on some Prop 51 funds coming in. But we are at a point where we are repairing both east and west. Significant patching is taking place with asphalt to eliminate trip hazards. Crack filling and oiling is happening, and then there'll be a slurry seal that will occur, and ultimately they'll be restriped at the end of July. We've been creating quite a valley buzz. Hey, what's going on over there? So nice to be able to take care of some of those deferred maintenance needs. Just want to share some pictures on the cafeteria pit and remodel that we're engaging in. A reminder that we have several different funding sources that are coming to bear on this project. The majority of that being the Measure K. This is the last of the Measure K funds that we will be expending. We also have $1 million in developer fees, and then the district's contribution at the outset. We still have a remainder of the $500,000 that we set aside as our commitment to the community back in 2016 to be a part of what was going on, since they were asking the taxpayer for so much. So some fun stuff here. This is currently inside of our cafeteria, and we're going to show you several different directions in there. This is now just a food service area, and it simply serves that purpose. There's no place for students to sit. There's storage areas, and you'll note in the back of the wall here a little bit of history. This area right here and these side areas, proscenium walls. This was the opening of the original theater, built in 1934, and was the only indoor theater at that time. And to date, our little theater on campus here is the only indoor theater in the valley. So neat claims to fame there. But that became behind there a classroom for a while, ASB classrooms, and it's now storage. And so what we will be doing is actually demoing that wall, removing that stage and pushing it back up about another 25 feet back there to create seating space and also add for serving space on the west end of that. So I want to bring this up just for fun, actually. You'll note our ceiling up there. I want to bring that to your attention right now because it's a stunning ceiling. It actually has some similarities to the ceiling in this room. And someone made the choice at some point, I'm sure all well-intended, to put these long fluorescent lights on either side of that. And you walk in there, and I guarantee you 95% of the people that have been in there have never noticed that ceiling. And when we're done, and we remove those and we have new lighting, people are going to say, what a stunning ceiling. You spent Measure K dollars on this beautiful ceiling? The answer is no. Publicly want to state that right now. But when we are finished, that ceiling will, as they say, pop. It will be pretty fantastic. So what are we going to do in there? So this is now the back of that room, that same wall where the theater was, now gone. You'll notice that this last truss coming across, running that way, the rest run the opposite direction. That's where the stage area is. And so we'll be adding different lighting and that kind of thing, and a window on that end, capturing some extra light in there. And just a reminder, this is kind of fun. With all the construction that we've been working on, we want to accomplish a couple of things. One, modernize, do something new to update the facilities. But what are some nods to the past in there as well? Because we have some amazing history here. And so this was actually found by one of Alan's architects, and this is beadboard along the side and the wainscoting. That was actually discovered on an old set of blueprints. And so we're going to bring some of that back, which will really be unique. And then we'll have seating built in along the sides here and then movable on the inside. I want to also draw your attention to, this is an existing door. The food serving area will be right in here. And then the point of sale where students will actually pick up or pay for their food will be at these three little kiosk type areas. And then they'll make their way out to sit either here, or these two openings are an entrance to the only new construction that we will be doing, the only new construction since the science building was built in the mid-90s. So let's take a look at that real quick. There's just another take. There again, this is the food service area that will happen. Here's the flow of traffic, how quickly we can serve students, all is going to be improved tremendously. So let's take a look at that addition. This is back in the theater. But this is back in the multi-purpose cafeteria room in there, and this is all new addition. The furniture will look very different. This is just an earlier rendering. And then you have these windows facing out to the pit area, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Again, this entire addition will be funded exclusively with developer fees. This is looking out the other direction. Now the pit is on your left, and then these are doors heading out north, and through those doors is the new gym. So we have an opportunity to seat actually, and again, the seating will be better in here, about 124 students in there, which will be pretty amazing. Okay, so it's a decent sized room. Okay, let's talk about the courtyard. This is an aerial view. That's the multi-purpose room we were just talking about. There's the old stage line right there. That sounds like an old Western statement or something. And here is the new addition there. And then the courtyard heading over to C Wing is right here. The maintenance building in G2 is about right there. So let's take a look at this. This was yesterday, and it's really kind of a setup photo. It was a great day yesterday, if you remember. The renderings are in sunshine, so I don't mean to be overly dramatic or anything. But same shot. Looking, it'll take just a second to, for some reason, the rendering sizes don't come up very quickly. So give it just a second. A little over snippety. Oops. Come on. There we go. Look in the same direction. So this whole area, we have to go through here and replace sewer pipe that goes through there. And so we thought, okay, we're going to be ripping all kinds of things out. How do we reconstruct it when we're done to make it a space that's actually used by students? These are the shade structures that will be in place. They're square. This is the new gym looking across. And now the main thoroughfare through there, the addition is way in the back there where the laser is. And this will be the new main thoroughfare through there. Very, very exciting. This pit area is not used in the interior at all by anybody. We have Friday football rallies in there, but that's about the only time that ever gets used. And then back in here was an old vending machine, and pigeons own actually that corner of it. And this is what the new addition will look like in there. So you now have planter beds on either side, 3 steps going up to the gym and the new addition. And if you'll recall, between these pillars, there's, see this connected concrete is, and Alan, forgive me, I can't remember the official term of what those are.
Plinth.
Thank you, a plinth. I never can recall that. Wow. Anyway, so we've opened all this up for path of travel, and we were just talking about literally finalizing the trees we put in there, what that all looks like. Pretty exciting stuff. Another look.
So why don't you not cut that plinth down?
The plinth. So right now it's in there. We actually had a conversation about that today as well, but the thinking was a little bit of seating there as well. So anyway, that was the idea behind that. Looking back towards, again, the new addition there, locker rooms are out through that side of the basketball.
Chris has a question.
Chris, go ahead.
Will there be any outdoor tables?
Yes, we'll have outdoor tables and outdoor seating. You mentioned, matter of fact, you haven't seen some of the new jazzed up tables out there that Rob Hill has been painting, the one with the American flag. Those are pretty awesome stuff. So we've got lots of options now with Rob Hill and the paint booth. And so this was on a sunny day, just trying to be fair to everybody, and that's what the new will look like. There's the old, this is the back side. The business office is right here and right adjacent to it. Jimmy Palacios, this classroom, and then the staff dining areas back in there. You can go all the way through the girls' locker room on that side, and that's what that'll look like. I think.
So irrigation, direct tolerant plants, native plants, what do you plant? Oh, yeah.
You would ask me for names. Alan, I can not to adjust.
You, but I won't do
Chris,
that to
nothing
you.
scientific, Chris, that's for sure. So let's just let that go. Okay.
Botanical names for you.
But did try to make some very thoughtful decisions in regards to shade, drought tolerance. They are plants on a high school campus, and
Yes,
so
of
we want to
course.
make sure that they are hardy and that they don't produce any fruit that would be a tempting projectile for which students might throw at each other. So we took that practical consideration as well. Okay? And then your last last one, looking back, into is the back side of the cafeteria, and then the new addition is going to come all the way out to here. So it's actually quite long, and the depth in there is pretty good size. And this will be your last shop. There it is.
Wow.
And so this is butted right up against, this is the music room that you're seeing here. And again, there's that addition, there's all those just fantastic windows that are in there, and then you're in and out path of travel with the doors there. Should be a fantastic. Yes.
Where is the faculty lounge?
Faculty lounge stays where it is.
Is it so extended?
Yeah, it's back off this direction here. Same place it's always been.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just a little more to the right. Okay? So I hope you're as excited as I am. We're about to embark, assuming the board passes all these next couple of items on the agenda. 9 months of work, maybe 10 or 11, depending on how construction goes, that will be an amazing improvement for not just practically, but visually, flow of traffic, all kinds of things for both our students and our community. So this is really an exciting time. And this will be the last of a major K journey that we started quite some time ago. So I would like to introduce Pete and Alan to come on up as we talk about these two agenda items. And while they're coming up, I would like to give some extra thanks to Pete. As you know, we went through some electrical emergencies with existing lines, not the new switch gear, that required a tremendous amount of work to replace that. Pete spearheaded all of that for us. There were multiple late nights involved, and Pete was doing a stellar job in terms of getting all the people that we needed to get the work done with very short notice and working some really long night and weekend hours. So Pete, I want to thank you very much for that. So we definitely hired the right person for the job, and we selected Dion and got Pete a couple years ago. Okay, and we're working back in his office next to my office as well. It's been good stuff. So, and Alan for seeing us on this journey as well. Where we're doing the final leg. It's really a good thing.
So let's have a motion, and then we can have
Sure.
discussion. So we have a motion to approve award bids to trade contractors for Ynez Valley High School campus-wide facility improvements. So moved. Okay, Eileen, our second. All right, Chris. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All right, is there any discussion?
Or questions for
Questions,
each.
Pete or
Alan.
Alan?
And at $4.5 million, I should have a couple questions.
Chris?
I'm sorry. Oh, it's your turn.
The names of Chuck McKinnon and Kesson, the contractors are out of Boston. The two contractors, where is
Clausen is based out of Bakersfield, and then the other contractor, QueenCon, is based out of Grover Beach.
and good reputations and
They both have good reputations.
it's kind of work.
Yes, well, definitely. John, you have some questions?
Yeah, I asked these of Scott earlier, so mainly for the other board and the public. One of my questions I asked Scott was, how many competing bids were there? And Scott, do you want me to answer my own question since I know what you
Yeah, or just maybe give a couple of them like you had, and then give Pete a chance to address the process too.
Well, I don't know whether they would know how many competing bids there were.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So we had a total of 2 bid packages, and we had 3 bids between the 2 packages. So we had 2 bids on the second bid package, and 1 bid on the first bid package.
Can I, this time of the year, we were a little late, right, Pete, on,
There
we
are a
were
number of
planning to-
factors.
Yeah, and so that was maybe contributed to the small number of bids?
Right. So there's a number of factors that went into bidding this time. Scott kind of broached on our schedule. This time of year, contractors that follow this type of work are pretty well booked up for the summer. We actually had a fairly extensive interest list of 4 and 5 deep on each, and they were last minute decisions to not bid. So there was quite a bit of interest out there and competition. And at this point, with the numbers and the contractor reputation given the market right now, the labor shortage, material escalation, being within budget, there's no reason in my mind why I wouldn't recommend moving forward with these.
Have any of the
contracts.
contracts been awarded to companies for which the district has previously used?
Have I understand your question?
Have
Have
any
either of
of
these
the
contractors worked with the district previously?
Correct.
No.
And so with that in mind,
However, these are general contractors, so they have subcontractors that have worked with the district.
And expand on that, how many subs do you anticipate?
There'll be several. This is multidisciplinary. You guys saw the renderings. There's everything from landscaping to mechanical, electrical, carpentry, concrete, painting. So there are local subcontractors to this county that are involved with the work that have worked with the district before for both electrical and mechanical, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning.
so does the evaluation of the bids involve any type of due diligence where somebody goes and looks at previous work the general or the subs have done to make sure it is of the quality that the district would expect?
That's a good question. There was a pre-qualification process, and the contractor that actually has the larger bid package submitted a pre-qualification and was pre-qualified through a standardized process.
As far as a visit though, and you're talking about the subcontractors in particular?
Correct.
Yeah, so subcontractors have not been hired yet, correct?
Right, they're tier contractors, so if the board approves the prime contract tonight, then subcontracts will go out. Everybody will be underneath that general contractor. So the subcontractors are qualified and listed on the bid documents. They are licensed and certified by the state.
So is that part of what's expected of the general to do his due diligence? I mean, the analogy would be, Scott, if any of us was building from scratch our dream home, you're going to do your due diligence and go out and look at the work that any one of these contractors has previously done. So that's the analogy. So have we done that, or is somebody going to do it for us?
So Pete's our guy as a construction manager, as the owner's representative to make that happen. The good news is that we've used a lot of subcontractors to get to this point, and each of those have been a job interview with the job that they've done either well or not. We've been pretty fortunate so far with the subs that we have on campus, but that is Pete's job to vet that for us.
So at the end of the day, both of these contractors are reputable in line with the track record, been in business for a number of years, that type of thing.
Right. And the district has a number of safety valves in place because this is a public contract. And these contractors are licensed, they're certified by the state. There's a payment performance bond that's associated. If they slip and fall, they not only have the individual standing in front of you today to help them get back up, the district also has the surety to pay their bills and perform their work if it comes to that.
Will the contract have a performance completion date? If the answer is yes, how is that date determined? And what will be the financial penalty if it's not met?
We have two separate contracts, and the period of performance is based on the contract. So the larger work is 180 working days is the period of performance. That is started when the board issues the award, and the contracts are executed. So we're in the process of that right now. The notice to proceed date will be when we get that information back, the contract, the bonds, and the insurance. So hopefully within a week, that clock will start ticking. For the smaller portion of work, it's 35 days.
And what's the
The penalty, the LDs are $750 a day for the larger bid package, and then $250 a day for the small.
So there comes a point in time when you'll be given a report to Scott that says, this subcontractor's work is officially done as of this date. And then the whole project is officially done as of this date.
The contract stipulates that period of performance that I just described, 180 days.
All of this in 180 days.
Working days.
Working, so, it's 9 months.
It's just shy of 10 months.
You do realize this is California?
Yeah. And it's construction in general, so yes.
That's about it.
Yeah.
We can do this.
Yeah, 9 months, 9 months is a reasonable timeline, and then mechanisms in place if it's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So, and then period payments and progress along the way, maybe speak to just briefly about that.
So the period of performance goes along with progress payments, and the progress payments are based on the percentage complete. So every month I will get with the project inspector, we'll decide how far along they are, and they will be paid accordingly based on a document that schedules the values of the construction, and it is essentially a cost-loaded schedule.
You mentioned liability insurance for the workers. Scott, who has the policy for any students or staff that are injured on the construction site? Is that their policy or our policy?
So employees, I mean, well, one, they better not be inside the fence.
Well, let's say they don't get that. These are
So
students.
that's an insurance
If
question.
there's a tort, that we let the lawyers sort that out. There's insurance in place for the contractors, for the construction manager, my firm, for the architect that are in front of the district's policy. And there's actually a special policy that the district took out. This goes back over a year now to the builder's risk policy.
And does that include students and staff by
Yes.
name?
By name, with their reference to their specific needs. Yeah.
Because the owner is listed as additional insurance, so the district is insured.
Chris, how are we going to, how is this going to work with interaction with the student body and teachers, flow, traffic, interruptions?
It's definitely going to be an impact on the campus, but safety is one of the biggest concerns that we have. So the firm that I work for has 2 full-time safety officers, and while students are when school's in session, they'll be 100% fenced off from the workers. So this is going to be an inconvenience for the next 9.5 months.
What will happen in the cafeteria with food service?
Yes, so we've had to make alternative plans for that. We're already working on that in spring in anticipation of the summer start of construction. So
It's a work in progress.
it is work in progress. It'll be a lot of temporary serving areas and those sorts of things. Yeah, so we've been working on that for a couple of months.
Scott, could you specifically request for your records a copy of the insurance policy and then forward it to the district's attorney?
For what, so our attorney's already been through all that.
He's seen the insurance policy.
You've seen all of the documents associated with that.
The district attorney created what we call the front end, the general conditions, so the limits, the terms of the policy, the type of insurance form, all those are stipulated and are part of the bid, the contract documents. The contractor needs to provide the insurance limits in the amount specified.
So they don't move ahead, that's not in place, but it was vetted by our attorney saying these things need to be in place or you don't start, or you're not qualified.
Correct. Those are the documents that I mentioned, that are contingent upon them proceeding with the work, the bonds and the insurance and the contract.
Any other
Is that the
questions?
answer for you?
Any other questions? Alan, Pete, thank you so very much.
Anything?
But just excited to get it going, and I have worked with both of the contractors before, and particular Platinum right now, who is, has a bigger chunk. We're working with them on West College, and they're doing considerable time work there, so happy with the bids.
I'm sorry, what's the anticipated completion date?
March of 20, of next year.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. So this is a roll call, there's no other discussion.
Sure, Dr. Lee? Aye. Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Burgess?
I,
Mrs. Babcock?
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger?
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody.
Excited.
All right,
Yeah,
let's
very
go,
exciting.
we'll go to the next item 2, which is approval of assignment of trade contractors to Deani Building Corporation. Superintendent Corey?
Sure. Pete, can you just really quickly just explain this particular portion in terms of the
Yeah,
construction
so-
manager risk and talk about how that's...
As the construction manager, our contract relationship is at risk. So the contracts are assigned to my firm as the construction manager. So you will have our company, our corporation, as the contract holder, and have that extra layer of risk mitigation. And that's essentially why there is that assignment. So it's countersigning the contract that has already been signed by the district, takes us and puts us in the position of risk.
Actually beneficial position for us, but we have to officially, because of that CMAR, construction manager risk model, assign to the...
Scott, I'm sure you told us this before, but after this part of is completed, what do we have left to do after March?
So we will be done. This is our final scope of work with Major K. We need to have a conversation about, we are in line for Proposition 51 funds. Those have not been allocated. We may not see those for 2 years. $7 million currently under Prop 51, and we've submitted a third application to sit at the queue for the next state bond that would come up. 2020 is most likely to be one on the ballot for 1.3 million. And so we would be first in line because we're in the queue.
But this will complete Measure K.
That's correct. It will completely expend Major K.
And that's my next question, completely expend. I mean, I'm sure it won't be exactly neutral. I'm sure at the end of the day, we're going to owe some money, or there'll be some dollars
My
left.
plan, we do not owe some money.
Yeah, or there's some dollars left over, and that also would be problematic with the strings that are attached to that.
So don't have an answer to that right now. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I haven't even honestly gotten to that point. I'm so excited to hear. So that's a good question. Yeah.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve assignment of trade contractors to Deani Building Corporation?
I would make that motion to give an assignment to Deani.
All right, Chris has a motion. Sandy Splitty, a second.
I will second.
Marie, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item 2. This is a roll call vote.
Dr. Bacon? Aye. Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Burgess?
Aye.
Mrs. Babcock?
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger?
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Pete, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And I'm having to drive home to Arroyo Grande, so
Okay.
thanks so much.
Thank you. Item number 3, consideration of change in graduation requirement for Maplewood High School, the reduction of elective credits from 70 to 50. This was brought as a discussion item last meeting.
Correct. And so bringing this to you for a vote, Mrs. Gugonis here, on the other side of some summer vacation. Thank you very much for being here. And so this is coming to you for approval. If there are any questions, we can certainly answer those for you between Mrs. Gugonis and myself. Otherwise, I'm seeking your approval.
Okay, let's have a motion for approval so we can have discussion. So moved. Okay, Eileen, do we have a second? Second. Okay, Tori. So we have a motion and a second to approve item 3, the graduation requirement for Rubio. Do we have any discussion?
Yes.
John?
I'm very supportive of the high school, and I plan on voting for this motion, but I will just state, I hope that this is truly in the students' best interest. I'm not 100% convinced. But as I said, I do plan on voting for it.
Thank you. Tori?
I have implicit faith in Mrs. Gugonis, who's worked with her before, and I know for sure that she has the students' best interest in heart, plus her quite a bit of professional expertise in this area as well. So I'm very comfortable voting for this. I like the emphasis upon the
4 core subjects. I think it's really necessary and needed for the students to have those skill sets. As I've said before, I've worked with recruiting those students when they mainstream back in our classes, and you and I both know that it's very important for them to have that training background. So I appreciate the work on this.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is a roll call vote?
Dr. Bacon? Aye. Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Burns?
Aye.
Mrs. Babcock?
Aye.
Mrs. Clevenger?
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, folks. Number 4, conceptual approval of joint use lease agreement with the City of Buellton and the San Ynez Valley Union High School District for the purpose of obtaining State Proposition 68 funds for the aquatics complex. Thank you for waiting, folks.
Mrs. Gomez, thank you very
Yes,
much.
thank you,
Certainly
Stephanie.
do not need to remain unless you'd like to hear the rest. We'll do that.
Thank you, sir.
So I would like to welcome 3 more guests here, Mr. Bello, Mrs. Thompson, and Mrs. Palmer, presented to us last time. Again, this is for approval in concept so that a letter of intent can be included with the Prop 68 application. And we already have our council and the Buellton City Council working on the lease joint use agreement language. Application for Prop 68 is due August 5th. So we've got some things that we need to get moving on with that, and we've already connected councils to make that happen. But if there are any other questions, we'd like to take those at this time, and we have these 2 folks to help us with those answers if there are any questions.
Question, John?
I asked Scott this earlier today. Kyle, I don't know whether the other board members have this same issue or not, but what would help me is if you and/or Scott could prepare a timeline as indefinite as the time points might be, which says the next step is this, the next step is this, the next step is this, because you know, we frequently at these board meetings will have various what look to me to be peripheral issues that deal with the aquatic center. And of course, we had the PowerPoint that Bruce Porter gave us. But I don't really know where we're going, when we're hoping to be there. And I guess the biggest question is when is the grand finale of the board having to finally give some decisions? I mean, I just would like to have a general schematic of timeline. Here's where we're going.
Correct. Dr. Bakey, I will defer actually to Kristen Thompson, who has a better handle on the timeline. She's on the foundation. I can speak and again to any questions on the actual joint use agreement and what that would look like. But since that's only one part of the larger timeline, if I could bring Kristen up, she may be able to answer your question better.
And what would really help me is if ultimately somebody could make some piece of paper that I could be looking at that truly is just a written timeline.
For the Prop 68?
For the whole project.
Oh, for the whole project. Well,
To construction.
From today to splash.
we can definitely do that. So let me give you the bookends. So August 5th, the application is due. We have to have doors open to the public by March 2022. Mandatory within the grant application if we receive those funds. So everything's going to happen within that time period. But we can certainly spell it out for you more clearly on a piece of paper if that would help.
And the advent of this whole Prop 68 funding pursuit has helped to define, which is a really good thing, to define some of these timelines. So it's been, so we can definitely get
So I guess the same thing worded differently. When Bruce comes and gave us that wonderful presentation, at the risk of seeming cynical, why did he do that? I mean, the question is Bruce was trying to sell us on something that probably we all are already on board with. So I get the feeling like people are trying to win our approval of this. You've, in essence, got it. Every meeting we're getting a little more education as far as funding, as far as whether the pool is going to be north to south or east to west, and we go these little additions. But I'm wanting to know the big picture. When is this thing finally ready to go?
Sure.
And what is our role in that?
Yeah, and so we can certainly view that, and they're actually all, anybody who's been here at my invitation, as a progress update. We've Go ahead.
If I could address that comment, because I think it's your question and it's a valid concern. Honestly, when Bruce came, we realized we needed to provide an update on the project to the board, right? It had been some time since we've been here. You know, we've been wrestling with the fundraising and, you know, the project mutates as projects do. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just defining the boundaries and defining what we can do on the site and those logistical issues. When the Prop 68 opportunity came on our radar, that was a game changer in how we decided we were going to proceed, as we talked about before, because of the dollar amount that's available to us in one fell swoop. You know, the $6.3 million for a community our size is a significant chunk of money. So and I'll defer to Kyle and Kristen if I need to, but the big picture is in order to be eligible for the Prop 68 funding, the district couldn't be the lead agency. So that put into motion, how do we put together a collaborative approach that is going to satisfy the requirements for Prop 68, but also long-term benefit the community. So that's how we came, and you know, is that how we set out 2 years ago to do this? But I think it's a great solution when the district is providing the land and the asset and the operation and maintenance coupled with the programming expertise we have in the city of Buellton. So that's a long way of getting to your question. We did the update, or Bruce provided the update because we knew it had been some time, and we, you know, as our landlord and partner, we need to keep you apprised of our progress. This, how do we put together this strategic partnership in order to be able to move forward with Prop 68 funding, plus would it will really be a functional model on the programming side, and you know, I want to call it shared services. That's really was the impetus for Bruce was and then we had to come when we figured out we had to do some sort of lease agreement or legal arrangement and commitment that was contingent upon getting those Prop 68 funds. I don't know if I made it worse or better.
No.
Okay.
And if I might, again, that key piece, the way that the state Prop 68 is worded, school districts are specifically excluded from being eligible for those funds because they're eligible for Prop 51 and other bond funds. Cities and counties are eligible for these Proposition 68 funds, and so that's where this joint use partnership allows this project, which will be on a high school campus and serving high school students as well as community use, can be eligible for that $6.3 million. And just want to share with all of you, we brought this conceptual idea again to the Buellton City Council on June 13th, and unanimously they agreed to move forward and really looked forward to having this joint use partnership. The city, as many of you know, has a very successful model with the Buellton Union School District in operating the recreation center, and that is again on a school campus. The school district is able to have that, you know, they have priority for all of the school activities, and then evening hours, weekends, summertime, the community is able to access that, and the city provides the programming opportunities. And so down to all 5 council members, we're so proud to be able to participate, hopefully, and get your approval tonight in concept to move forward to the next step of drafting that language, because they see the benefit to the high school students, who many of them have children who matriculated here, and to the larger community as that prime facility that we hope it will be.
And so, as far as the follow-up, John's request, so the timeline, and then expectations, drilling down more on the expectations of the board along that continuum.
And that's a fluid timeline, I totally get it.
Yes, the one, as you're considering tonight, the next immediate step for the board after this meeting, if you decide to approve in concept and move forward, would be at your next meeting, since you have a recess in July. At the August 20th meeting, the two legal counsels would have had time to put together a draft joint use lease agreement to come back before you for approval. And so that would be the next step in the board's timeline.
So there's two parts to this recommendation. One is conceptually approve the joint use lease agreement, and then, and to have that draft at the August 20th board meeting, as Kyle said. And then the second part to that is to authorize the board president to sign a letter of intent to enter into the joint use.
To consider it at your August 20th meeting.
Right.
Because of the August 5th deadline to submit this grant application, the application does allow for not having all of your documents in by August 5th. And obviously, since the board does not meet again before then, that is the pathway to allow us more time is that letter of intent. And that's spelled out actually in the grant application. If you're not able to have an agreement by August 5th, include a letter of intent saying when the body next meets, they will consider that approval.
And Kyle, when do you expect the grant decision to be made?
Well, they have site visits for those under consideration, and those happen in November. So August 5th, submit. The August 20th meeting, if all goes well, then that would be final approval of that joint use lease agreement and submit that as well. So they're able to hold that place for that. Then as the state, it's the Office of Grants and Local Services that their staff is reviewing all of those applications. If we make it to consideration, they schedule site visits so they can actually come and see these sites where the funds would be expended. And so that's a good indication that if we make a site visit, that we're in contention. And then final decision on the funds, I believe is
End of December.
End of December, beginning of January.
And you maybe don't know this, but is it fair to assume that the decision will be all or none, or do you ever get a fraction of what you requested?
All or nothing.
Yeah.
And if you get the 6.1, was that it?
6.3.
6.3, and then combined with the monies that have already been pledged or received, what does that leave us still needing to generate?
Well, part of the requirement of this grant is that you have those either cash in hand or commitment pledges to make this project happen. So the 6.3 million can't be just, phase 2 and then there's 3 and 4. Right. We have to have all the ducks in a row and show that on paper in this application. I think maybe Lisa can speak more to that.
Well, that's what Kyle said is accurate. So we are fervently working to gain those commitments, and we're making good progress.
So we're still working to get the necessary commitments to bring us up to budget.
Essentially, there's what we're saying is about a $3 million gap, and we're close to we're in striking distance. Not overselling. I mean, we've got some big commitments on the line that we've been working on that we're.
So what you're saying is, if for some reason we don't get to the $3 million by December-ish,
The commitments. We can,
Right.
and those commitments can be over a 2-year time frame. In other words, if someone commits now, they have until January 1st of 2022 to decide how they want to flight those installments or what year they want to do it for tax reasons, or we've got some flexibility. But what the state requires is that we codify the commitments in whatever broad brush form they may be in, but we have to be able to add up to that I'm calling it that gap now.
And so those commitments are to be included with the application. So it's how many days?
Where's my phone? It's like 44 or something.
Literally a tracker.
We have our countdown clocks going.
that's huge.
It's big.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And not to, I mean, it's been, I should emphasize the importance of the city of Gilton taking action to support this. I mean, with the various, with the city of Gilton, you know, the county has invested in terms of, they committed to a $250,000 in developer fees, and we're working on additional monies from them. I mean, as investors are looking at this and seeing buy-in from jurisdictions throughout the valley, that's helping our cause and helping us to move the needle.
And this certainly has been the catalyst that we have hoped for to keep the interest and have come alongside other donors.
Just real quick, who was writing the grant?
The foundation is. Yeah, the foundation's writing the grant.
We've had a grant writer on board for better, I don't know, almost 2 years now, who has, you know, significant experience and has become a real Prop 68 expert in the process because of the huge opportunity it represents for us. You know, and again, one of the reasons that Kyle mentioned the district's not eligible for funds. These Prop 68 funds have to go to either land acquisition or a new facility, neither of which the city of Gilton or the city of Solvang has, you know, within their current scope of work. So there is no opportunity right now for the cities to realize those money other than there's a separate Prop 68 bucket of per capita funds that everybody's eligible for if you apply for it. And as part of the city of Gilton's action on the 13th, they also dedicated all of their per capita funds, which is $200,000, that we're helping them to apply for, and those will also get dedicated to this project. And we'll be asking the same from the city of Solvang. I think we're going to be on their agenda in July. So.
And it's not just allocating state funds of this per capita program, which is based on population, so that $200,000 for a small community, that's the minimum amount, and basically, if you apply, that monies have been set aside for those based on population. There is a city match requirement of 20%, and so the city of Gilton, in buying into this project, has to come up with and has agreed to allocate $40,000 from its own general fund to be toward this project. So they are an active investor, not just a pass-through from state grant monies. So when they signed up and agreed in concept and wanting to move forward, they also put some skin in the game.
40% means 20% of what?
Of 200,000.
Just again, real quick, anything coming from, or possible to come from Solvang?
That's what, in July, they'll be at the Solvang City Council, the foundation will be asking for that same commitment of per capita program funds.
They definitely have them in their sites. So, John, you captured that the $200K committed developer fees, but they had to pony up.
Well, that's apples and oranges. The developer fee is a completely separate commitment on the part of the county, completely separate from Prop 68. The Prop 68 200 we're talking about from the city of Gilton and the city of Solvang are the per capita funds each city is eligible for, and that's how much they're eligible for, and the size of community they are is $200,000. City of Gilton has agreed to commit their $200,000 to the project, but they have to pay 20% of that $200,000, which is $40,000.
If Gilton is being so gracious and emptying that, you were about ready to make that comment, so what about Los Olivos and San Ynez? And
So they're not
They're all not city county, so.
And
They're not cities.
yeah, and to that effect, the county also is eligible for these per capita program funds under Proposition 68, and so the foundation is also approached the county for their per capita funds. So it won't be 200,000 because counties only get 400,000 total, and it's divided up between 5 supervisorial districts. So it comes to 80,000.
About
something.
80,000, assuming the entire 5th district is allocated to this. So we're working on it.
Yes.
Good question. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, but I know Proposition 68 has multiple programs beneath it. So the per capita program is one, And then tonight, it's the statewide park development program, which is the 6.3 million competitive grant process, which that's the lion's share.
Okay, so without any.
Can I just add one other quick comment? And the thing that's really key about the Prop 68 competitive grant process is they like to see collaboratives, multi-jurisdictional, regional facilities where everybody puts in. So by having all the partners that we have involved, that's critical for us in the application process. It's a 100-point process, 9 criteria. And so we really want to maximize each one of those 9 areas. And so by having the community planning meetings and having these, multiple jurisdictions, that goes well for us.
Right.
Definitely.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks, Sophie.
Okay, so thank you very much. And with that, let's see, do we have a motion to approve? So moved. Eileen? Chris? A motion and a second to approve item number 4. Roll call, please.
Dr. Dickey? Aye. Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Burgess? Mrs. Babcock? Mrs. Clevenger?
Aye, motion carries 5-0. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just 2 weeks ago for me, for dialing in, and is back for your approval now.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the LCAP?
So moved.
Eileen? Seconded. All right, Tori. We have a motion and a second to approve the 2019-2020 LCAP. Are there any questions or discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Dr. Dickey? Mrs. Preston?
Aye.
Mrs. Burgess? Mrs. Babcock? Mrs. Clevenger?